Have you ever found yourself chasing toxic love, getting bored in the mundane, and feeling like rejection might actually kill you when it comes to your relationships? Yeah, me too. I've spent my whole life untangling love and relationships and wondering why they are so bloody complex. And since getting my ADHD diagnosis, I can't help but wonder even more how much ADHD might have had a part to play in all the drama. Well, today's guest might have the answers we have been looking for. I'm so excited to announce we have Dr Anna Machin, who is an Oxford trained anthropologist. And she has been seen on the Diary of a CEO and is the author of 2 incredible books, Why We Love and Life as a Dad. So what are you waiting for? Let's get untangled. So, Dr Anna, thank you for being here.
That's all right.
Can you tell everyone who you are and what your current life mission is?
Okay. Oh, crikey. My name's Dr Anna Machin. I'm an evolutionary anthropologist, writer and broadcaster. And my current life mission probably is to get people to really engage with their relationships and really recognise where the love is in their lives.
I love that. You've come to understand that love sits at the centre of what it means to be human. If that's the case, then why is it so bloody complicated?
Because humans make everything complicated, basically. We're just really, really good at it because we've got massive brains. So in other animals which do have love, they've kept it really simple. It's all instinctive. There's no conscious thought associated with it. They have very restricted number of relationships, maybe a mating relationship, maybe a relationship with, the offspring, and that's it. Whereas we've got a massive conscious brain. So we don't only just have the instinctive chemistry bit of love, we then overthink it massively, make it very, very complicated, and that's why it's so difficult. We reflect on everything too much. And also we have so many different sorts of relationships. So we have, romantic relationships, but we also have, friendships and community relationships, and we love our dogs, and some people are religious, and so we've just expanded the whole thing.
We've made
massively.
life harder for ourselves.
Yeah, we always do. We just always do. I mean, if we had a smaller brain, life would be so much easier.
But is that why we get more from love and our relationships than other species, do you think?
I suppose we do. We get more in the sense that I think it is a bigger part of our lives. In other species, it's just very much a drive. It's a biological drive to do something. And we still have that, very much so. But we also, obviously, we've got great art and we've got literature and all that kind of thing. And that is us mainly trying to understand what love is and try to grasp for a second what it makes us feel like.
Yeah.
So we've made love, more complicated, but in a way, it's a much more intense feeling. It's a much bigger part of our lives. The chemistry that underpins our love is different. So, we have the endorphins involved in our love, which is why our love feels so euphoric and it's so addictive. And other animals don't have that. So, there's kind of swings and roundabouts as to whether we've made it too complicated or whether that's actually in the end a really great thing.
So, yes, ADHD, you've done a lot of work around ADHD. Yeah. You've done workshops for women and all sorts. Yeah. And you mentioned your daughter as well has ADHD. Yes. Do you have ADHD?
I don't think so. Every now and then my husband says I do, but no, I don't think so. I think actually it was my dad who had ADHD. And that's where, because obviously it's a massive genetic relationship. And I think that's probably where she got it from. But my daughter is actually ADHD, so she's got autism as well.
Oh, same as me. That makes it even more complex.
Yes, it really does.
It's like having 2 sisters, I said, who want the different things all the time.
Pulling against each other, so it's a tricky one. But I got into sort of neurodivergence and that relationship to relationships and love, partly from a personal point of view, obviously because of my daughter, but also because a lot of the science of the two overlaps, which is why people who are neurodivergent sometimes struggle in relationships, because you've got sort of the whole set of chemicals which underpin love, but then they are impacted directly by ADHD and autism. And that's why the two sort of overlap each other and why it can be a real struggle at times.
Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of true or false, and then we'll deep dive into it and explain a little bit more. But individuals with ADHD, are they more prone to chase toxic love?
Yes.
Individuals with ADHD, are they more prone to love addiction?
Yes.
Individuals with ADHD, do they get bored in relationships quicker?
Yes.
Pace and people. This is something that my clients are constantly coming to me with as a coach. Why do individuals with ADHD struggle to pace and tend to, this is the words from my clients, I fall too hard, too fast? Why? Why do we do that?
Because I think partly because of the role for dopamine in love. So obviously ADHD, dopamine is implicated in ADHD, and ADHD has a tendency to seek dopamine. And dopamine is particularly powerful at the start of relationships. It tends to tail off as the relationship settles down, but at the start, it's really powerful. And so I think people with ADHD tend to really love that first stage of a relationship, essentially. And so they fall very, very hard.
And how do we know then when we are looking for love, asking for a friend, if it's dopamine or real love? Is there a way to know that, do you think?
There isn't, though I will say the first stage of relationship isn't love anyway.
For nobody?
For nobody.
That's interesting.
Okay, so love comes down the line. Dopamine is very much involved in the attraction stage, and when it's a romantic relationship, in that, the lustful chemistry part of that, very passionate part of love. As researchers, we wouldn't actually call that love. Love is defined in a different way. So love is actually when an attachment has formed. Love is underpinned by different neurochemicals. Dopamine tends to go into the background when you're in love. It's much less of an involved chemical. Beta endorphin is actually what's involved. So what people with ADHD actually find addictive at the start is kind of the dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin side of it. And actually serotonin is implicated in ADHD as well. And we actually see a drop in serotonin actually at the start of relationships, but because it underpins obsessive love. And we think that because of the relationship between ADHD and serotonin, people with ADHD may tend to be slightly more obsessive at the start of relationships, and therefore it takes over sort of every element of their mind, of their thought, of their behaviour. But because of the fact that it's dopamine seeking, obviously once you've got past that stage, that's why people who have ADHD in relationships tend to get through relationships quite quickly, because the dopamine stops and then it's like, oh, actually I'm not getting what my brain needs now from this relationship, and that's why they're quicker to move on to something else.
So love at first sight is not true.
No, doesn't exist.
Wow. That's a great myth to bust though, isn't it?
Absolutely. Love at first sight doesn't, lust at first sight, absolutely. Chemistry at first sight, absolutely. Attraction at first sight, completely. Love, no. Love is much, much more complicated. People who say they fell in love at first sight, often they are reworking history. And quite often they're trying to sort of shore up or romanticize a relationship. But actually they didn't feel love at first sight. They felt lust at first sight.
And when you said about it being all-consuming and obsessive, it also reminds me of rejection-sensitive dysphoria. Is that the same part of the brain, like when we're overthinking or consumed in the beginning, like in a positive way, like we're feeling everything so deeply? Is that the same thing that's happening?
Do you know what? We're not quite sure about the neuroscience of that yet.
Right.
Okay. It's still a very early time. I mean, obviously, a lot of your listeners will know exactly what that feels like. It's incredibly emotionally painful. It's very aversive. But we still don't know what the neuroscience of that is. But if you have fallen harder, it is likely that you will experience more of a sort of withdrawal of a rejection if it goes wrong, for example. The other thing to say is that there is a gene associated with beta endorphin, which is what kicks in slightly further down in a relationship, which makes you more sensitive to social rejection. Now, not many people carry this, about 2% of the population.
Oh, wow.
But it does mean that if they are socially rejected, they feel that in a much more intense way. And really, a current area of research is whether that gene has an association with rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
Wow. So rejection sensitive dysphoria, it is proof that it's there, but there's not a lot of research.
We don't know the science yet. It's very much a phenomenon that's been identified reasonably recently.
Wow.
So it's something that, is going to take a few years to work out what's happening and why people who are neurodiverse tend to have it more intensely than other people do.
Oh, God, it's so interesting. So in your point of view and like personal opinion, because again, this is a question I get asked a lot, should we, as individuals with ADHD, be slowing down in the beginning, or should we just be looking for someone else? Because if someone is, rejecting that or feeling a bit put off, what's your opinion on that?
I think you should find someone else. I really do. When I did one of the women's workshops I've done recently, somebody stood up and said, the problem I have is everybody I've been out with says I'm too much. And then the answer to that is they're the wrong people.
Maybe they're just not enough
for you. They're just not the people for you. Because the point is, in a relationship, and I think one of the definitions of love is love is about being completely yourself. And if you're with someone and it's a real love relationship, you should be able to be completely yourself. You shouldn't have to play a part. You shouldn't have to constantly monitor your behaviour. So I would say, no, it's not about slowing yourself down. It's about finding someone who gets you for you.
Can keep up.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think if anyone ever says you're too much, then they absolutely are the wrong person for you.
I love that because I think, as you all know, we are a community that is known for masking, right? Our whole lives, especially late diagnosed.
Yes.
So I think that is going to be music to so many people's ears. And I hope it gives them the confidence to actually go out there and find someone who doesn't think they're too much.
Yes.
So when we're going out on a date as an ADHDer, is there anything we can do to like hack the date? And when I mean that is not mask, but like anything that we can do to give ourselves the best chance in being ourselves, I suppose.
Yeah, that's hard because obviously some people have masked for absolute years and letting your mask drop is a really, really difficult thing to do. So I'm not sure whether there's a lot you can do to really help you to do that unless you are going to be very, very conscious about it. But I say to all people, hacking dates in one sense is really easy. I mean, if you really want to start developing that bond, and give yourself the best chance of that person liking you, then absolutely you hack the neurochemistry of it. And one of the best things to do that is to do activities and behave in such a way that you get the releases of neurochemistry that are going to help you bond, essentially. And those are, obviously the dopamine, the oxytocin, the beta endorphin, and the serotonin. And the way we can do that, we know, for example, oxytocin is released in two ways, by touch and by what we call eye gaze. Now, eye gaze doesn't mean staring someone into submission.
Which is quite hard for some people.
Particularly if you're autistic as well, eye gaze is tricky. But eye gaze is about sort of really feeling a connection to that person, appropriate eye gaze, like the way we're looking at each other now. We're not staring each other down, we're looking at other bits of the room, we're looking down, we're doing that kind of thing. We bond quite through natural. Eye gaze. Yeah. We also bond through touch. Now, obviously, touch might not be appropriate, but if it is, touch, we are still sensory mammals. Yeah. And the way our lower mammal cousins do things is they keep proximity, they snuggle up and they groom each other. That's what they do. And so one of the things we do is touch. We get the same sensations from that, essentially. So you need to try and do that. I mean, I always joke that if you really want to have the best success, the best thing you can do on a first date or, one of the early dates is, and please stay with me on this, is do some form of couples dancing.
Dancing.
Okay? Dancing.
First date.
Ballroom dancing, tango, whatever you want, whatever is your gig. Because all of these, you get touch, okay, because you're holding each other, but you're holding each other in a kind of like a non-invasive way. It's a very formal way. Beta endorphin is released by lots of different behaviours, like exercise. Well, dancing is exercise. It's released by laughter. I mean, particularly if you're not very good at ballroom dancing, there's going to be quite a lot of laughter. It's your body's pain chemical. So if somebody stands on your toes, okay, you get a hit of pain, but then beta endorphin is released, and that also underpins bonding. Yeah. And also we know that if you do something in synchrony, that really ups your release of beta endorphin for both of you. So do this synchronous dancing, exercise, funny, painful behaviour. Okay, you're already there. You're getting oxytocin as well because you are touching each other. You're also getting dopamine from that. So you're getting all the lovely neurochemicals. Then after you finish ballroom dancing, go and have a curry.
Oh, I love curry.
Because, particularly a hot curry, so we're not talking a korma. No. You can't have a korma.
Whoever orders a korma there, it really annoys me.
You need something that's going to be a little bit spicy because it irritates your gut. And some of the major cells that release beta endorphin, but also the receptors, are in your gut. So you want to irritate your gut a little bit so that it releases beta endorphin as well. And that is basically the way to hack a first date. You want to do all the things you can do to really release all those bonding chemicals, lower the other person's inhibitions to, being in a relationship with you, which is something oxytocin does. And that will ease any of your nerves, but it will also improve the bond between you, improve the chances.
Do you know what? I really love that because, again, with my clients, when it comes to like exercise or building routines, I'm always like, we need fun first. Like,
Absolutely.
We can't do the hard thing first.
Dating should be fun.
Exactly.
I mean, this is the thing. In a way, with sort of dating apps and stuff, we've kind of taken the fun out of it, but actually dating should be fun.
It should be. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but if you've ever felt called to make a real difference, this just might be it. I'm Rosie, an ADHD coach, and together with everyone's favourite neuroscientist, Dr McGow, we have created a certified ADHD coach training. This is not just another training or course. This is a living curriculum built from science, movement, and lived experience. You'll learn how to coach ADHD clients with confidence, create meaningful change, and build a career that truly reflects who you are. Doors are now open, and head to untangledco.com to join the movement. Let's get untangled. Let's talk about apps actually and technology. How has that changed things? Is it making things worse or better?
It's kind of a balance. And I will say at this point, I'm the chief scientist of a new dating app, so I am slightly biased, which is called Love Jack, but we've done something different.
Exciting.
But yeah, so in one sense, they've made it much harder because your brain is the greatest dating algorithm there is. There's 500,000 years of evolution in there, priming you to be really good at spotting people that are good for you. And the way you do that is you take in lots of sensory information from them. And you take in, how they look, how they move. You listen to their tone of voice. You listen to what they have to say. If you're a woman, you can smell and you get a lot of feedback in terms of smell, particularly in terms of genetic compatibility. And also, because you're there in person, you get a release of all these hormones that help you in that situation. So oxytocin is released. Yeah. That lowers your inhibitions to forming new relationships. It quietens the fear center of your brain, the amygdala. And that means you're just much more confident to do it. It's a bit like having a couple of glasses of wine. It really makes you much more confident. You've got a release of dopamine, which is your hormone of motivation. It's going to kick you up the arse and go and do something. Whereas if you're on an app, you get practically no sensory information because there's no movement, there's no voice, there's no smell. Okay, you've got an image, but it might not even be an accurate image of the person you're going out with. So you're getting nothing. So you're handicapping your brain massively by doing it online, and you're getting none of the neurochemistry. Literally none. Maybe the tiniest bit of dopamine, but not a lot. So you've put yourself in a situation where you're supposed to be taking a decision on whether or not you're going to invest time in this person with nothing. Yeah. Literally nothing to give you any information. And a lot of the dating apps have quite crude algorithms. It's who's closest, or do you both like dogs? Or, it's just very basic science, and it doesn't work. So they have handicapped our brains and made it much more difficult. The other thing, if they're photo-focused, is that they tend to bias towards the way men pick partners. So men are much more looks-based, regardless of whether it's a hookup or a long-term relationship. They just are. And secondly, it biases towards a hookup, because when we are considering someone for a short-term relationship, looks are right at the top. Whereas in a long-term relationship, looks are actually quite a long way down the ladder of importance. And what's more important in a long-term relationship is things like, someone's personality, someone's values, their beliefs, their creativity, their sense of humour, really who they are at their core. And you get none of that information from the current load of dating apps. So those really big legacy apps are struggling because people find them frustrating because their brain is going, hello, literally nothing. Yeah. How the hell? And you've got so much choice. There's
too much
nothing,
choice.
Too much choice. So your brain is panicking, thinking, I've got no information and I'm supposed to be making a choice and I could just carry on flicking forever, which is what some people do. Yeah. So apps aren't going to go away. No. Essentially. We're there. Humans love a bit of technology. We're not going to dump it. So what we've got to do actually is have a bit of a revolution in how they work. And we need to make them so they work with our brains. And one of the things we do at Love Jack, for example, is actually we are very much aimed towards finding love, not a hookup app. If you want a hookup app, there's loads of those out there. Go do that. That's your thing. We want people to look for love and we want people to find love. And the way we do that is we are not photo focused in the first instance. We're not image focused. We ask people to provide us with 5 words. 5 words in that moment that describe something about you. It could be how you're feeling, what you're doing now, what you had for breakfast, what your deepest, darkest fantasies are, whatever. And we ask you to input those as regularly as you want. So they change. And what that means is that actually, if you read those 5 words, what tends to happen is at least one of them will spark your curiosity. Like, whoa, what does the person mean by that? And you're starting to understand their personality or their sense of humour or their creativity. So you're actually biasing it towards a long-term relationship, love. You're taking away the bias towards looks, which not only serves men, but actually only serves about the top 10% of people on dating apps who are good looking. If you're pretty average, you are at a loss on those dating apps.
You get lost.
Yeah. Whereas if you do it the other way around, you say, let's hear your personality first. Let's hear who you are. Are you funny? Are you creative? What are your interests? What are you doing today? Okay. Then we go, who are you in your soul? Yes. Because that's what we fall in love with. We don't fall in love with how someone looks. Someone said to me today, we don't fall in love with a 6-pack, actually. You fall in love with, someone's humour.
Oh, definitely. Humour is a big tip.
So what we do, we show you the 5 words. You read them, you're curious, and then after a period of time, you can press on them and you can see what the person looks like.
This is fantastic.
But we ask our users to update as much as possible. So actually, there's a whole archive of their 5 words. So you can actually see who were they last month, who were they yesterday, who were they, and you really get to know them. And that's where we think dating apps have to go. They have to actually say, how do we actually find love? What does our brain do when we find love? What is the best way we can do this? So we are human-led rather than tech-led, because we want people to really engage with each other on a human level. And that's the idea. So I think apps are going to have to change. We know that special interest apps like, farmers or, you love football or whatever, they're doing quite well because you've already got a basis of shared interest there. But you can't just rely on photos anymore. It doesn't work. And it doesn't work for a lot of people. No. So dating apps, ultimately, I would love everyone just to meet in person because that's what we evolved to do. Old-fashioned dating, as people like to call it. That's just not going to happen in this day and age. So we have to make sure the next best thing we can do is present you someone's mind.
Oh, I love
and say,
it.
Here they are.
And also that just be, I always think, can they be like an introduction instead of like, I can't talk for ages I've never got on with apps. And actually you saying that there's not much dopamine as we think. No wonder why.
Yeah, exactly.
Am I the only person that's just not engaging in their dating apps?
They should be. The great Helen Fisher, who was one of the great neuroscientists of love, she said they should be called introduction apps. They shouldn't be called dating apps. Because that's not what they're for. They're there to introduce you to somebody and then you get your bum in gear and you go and meet them.
I love this. So that brings me actually quite nicely on to my next question, because I was going to ask you what's more attractive, how we look or what we say scientifically. So I'm guessing what we say.
It depends what you're looking for. If you are looking for a short-term hookup, then the most important thing from an evolutionary and scientific point of view is how someone looks. And particularly for women, because if you become pregnant during that hookup, the only thing you're going to get from that person, if it's a heterosexual relationship, are their genes. And genes are related to attractiveness. So the more attractive somebody is, the stronger their genes are, which is why we tend to go for more attractive people in hookups and why we are more interested in what they look like. Whereas in a long-term relationship, actually long-term relationships are about companionship. They're about, if you're going to be parents, shared parenting ideas, all these sorts of things. Is this person going to be committed to me and stick around and help me with the kids or whatever it might be? And that's why long-term relationships are down the ladder, because whilst the genes are important, if you ever have offspring, fine. Actually, what's most important is this person a good person to be with? Are they kind? Are they compassionate? Are they going to support me? Are they committed? They're not going to leave me in the lurch. And that's actually what's more important. So in a long-term relationship, it's words. It's what somebody says that matters. Because actually in a long-term relationship, you're basically falling in love with their brain.
Does this also mean, I might sound stupid saying this, but if someone is very good looking, but they're not very good with their words, are they less likely to have long-term deep relationships?
Not necessarily. Ultimately, it's not an either-or situation. But what you will tend to find is it's that feeling we all have, particularly if we're looking for love and we're not looking for a hookup. You see someone across a crowded room, they're unbelievably good looking, you think, wow. And all the chemistry comes out and the lust comes out and it's amazing. And you're walking across the bar and you go and say something and they open their mouth and they are just stupid or whatever it might be, and you just go, oh God. Because the reason why you go, oh God, is because, I couldn't possibly have a long-term relationship with this person. Yeah. Because ultimately,
it's an anticlimax.
It's a massive anticlimax, and ultimately I know that there is more to sitting across a table from someone and just they're pretty.
Exactly.
Actually life is more about that. It's about that connection of being. It's about that connection of mind. And so actually, in one sense, being a good looking is great. But actually, ultimately, there has to be something underneath it.
Yeah, definitely. And do you know what it's making me think is that if you meet someone for the right reasons, like for their soul, for their words, for their mind, then actually that love can grow and become even better than what it started at. Whereas if you go straight in for the looks, it's potentially going to just get worse.
Well, either it becomes very hollow, or all our looks diminish over time, essentially. And it's just a very... particularly for a species with such massive brains, it's a particularly empty connection. Whereas, as you say, minds develop. Minds, you will constantly discover something about that person.
Exactly.
And that's actually what you need. Humans
That's stimulating as well, isn't it?
Humans can love for decades. And so if you're going to be that person, then you need to have something that's constantly evolving, constantly changing, constantly creating. And that's why the mind is more important.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Do you think we've lost that though? Because I'm thinking of people that I know when they're dating, and I feel like they're not always choosing from a place of someone's mind.
Absolutely. I think we have lost that, but that's because we've been given this thing that's supposed to be a tool to help us, and which is basically constantly promoted what somebody looks like. And also with social media, because social media is so visual, we are constantly looking at images, and that kind of trains your brain to be, this is the most important thing about this person. And actually it's not, but our brains are very plastic. We're very quick to alter the way we behave, and that's the problem, because and that's why current dating apps don't really work because they've been sold on the fact that this is how you should choose somebody. And then people find it doesn't work and they become very frustrated and they become demoralised because it's not actually achieving what they thought it would achieve.
So could social media and dating apps be behind more divorce and separations, do you think?
Potentially. I think that is, there is lots of stuff, we are used to with social media, everything being perfect. Everything's filtered. We very rarely present what's really going on, around the picture. And that means that I think people expect relationships to be perfect and they're not. So I think there's several reasons. There's that. There's also the romantic story that we've been told is not a helpful story. The idea that there's the one. There isn't a one. There isn't one perfect person for you. There are many people who are a compromise. If there was only one person in the world for you, there are 8 billion people in the world. The likelihood that you would end up with them is very small. So, there are lots of people out there for you. They will all be a little bit of a compromise. Some of them will be more of a compromise than the other. And you will meet lots of different people. And amongst them, there will be several people who could be great for you. So that idea, the idea that love should all be butterflies and roses and happiness and it's never difficult. No, it's really hard, love. There will be times when it's the most painful thing. And I think in selling this perfect romantic picture, we're actually doing particularly the younger generation a disservice because it's not preparing them for what love really is like. No. And it's hard. And the other reason we're seeing more divorce and separation is actually just to do with our lifespans and particularly women. And the fact that, when the idea of monogamy and long-term relationships and being in one, marrying for life was a thing. You were lucky if you got into your 50s, 60s maybe. And therefore, it wasn't decades and decades and decades after you'd had your children, for example. Now, you could, have menopause at 50 and you can still be, rocking and rolling at 30, 40 years later. Now, do you want to be in the same relationship? Do you really want to be married for that long? Is this person you had children with, who's a great partner, actually the person you want to grow old with, though, because you get different needs at that point. So what we're actually seeing is we're seeing a massive rise in divorces instigated by post-50 women. Wow. Because they are looking and going, okay, yeah, this was a great relationship, but actually I want something different now. And again, we know data from the younger generation of women in particular, that also more and more women are choosing not to have romantic relationships because for whatever reason, it's not something that meets their needs. They're also choosing not to have children because we have that control now over our fertility. And actually what we're finding is their primary love relationships are with their friends. They're friends with their chosen family. They're friends of what we would call their survival critical relationships. They are the people they turn to when things get really, really tough. So there has been a real change, partly to do with lifespans, partly to do with women's sort of emancipation and ability to exist on our own without having to be validated in a relationship or have children. But it's also, I think, I'm afraid the way we have sold love is not helpful.
No. And, you mentioned us being on our own more, women, and, maybe not having children. How, does that have a negative impact on our health?
Absolutely not.
No.
We have this belief that romantic love is like the pinnacle of love and having children is really, really important. And, they're wonderful love experiences. They are, if they go well, they're great. Mm-hmm. But there's no hierarchy of love. It's like literally a flat spectrum. And we have so many different opportunities for love and they all have equal value. And, we know that having love in your life is the most important factor in your mental and physical health, your well-being, your longevity, your happiness. We know that now. The data is very, very strong. Stronger than not smoking, not being obese, exercising, eating all your veg, all that kind of thing. So much more important.
So important.
But what the nature of that love is doesn't matter. So it can literally be any sort of love. So there's no detriment if you as a person go, romantic love's not for me, having children is not for me. Okay, fine. Just make sure you get love somewhere else. And if you do, you're going to be absolutely fine.
So as long as you have that community, then
it's all that matters.
It's no difference.
Yes, all that matters.
There we go. This is why I want to say I want to live on a commune. It's fine. So let's talk about divorce because ADHD in relationships, I read somewhere, and again, there's not loads of research, as you might know, but what I did read said that we're twice as high when it comes to divorce stats. Do you know have you heard that?
I'm afraid that is true. And actually there's some data that shows, particularly if you have a high inattentive dimension to your ADHD, it's actually 4 times higher.
Wow. And I'm one of those stats. I'm already divorced too. So tell us why that is happening.
It's partly because we tend to find relationships which have ADHD members in them more conflictual. And that's probably to do with the difficulty that some people with ADHD have in terms of emotional regulation. They tend to be quicker to anger. They also tend to be more conflictual because they are perceived as being less invested in the relationship. And that's partly because of the attentiveness side of ADHD, or the lack of attentiveness. For example, you could make an agreement with a partner to, okay, we're going to work hard at this, or we're going to do this date next week. And obviously we know with the issues with things like remembering things or attention or, scheduling things, you forget. And that is seen as being someone who's not invested in the relationship. Wow. So you are much more likely to be perceived as being less invested, quicker to anger, selfish? Quicker to conflict. Yeah, more selfish. And that is a destabilizing thing in a relationship.
That's so interesting. So the inattentive traits are more detrimental to a relationship than the hyperactivity. Wow. Yeah. And I suppose that like stating the obvious, that they are internalized, and you can't really, at least with the hyperactivity, impulsivity, addictive traits or all of that, you can see that and see a reason, I suppose, for that or what's happening. Wow. Okay. So let's talk about ADHD and open relationships. Considering that we're quite, we chase dopamine, we really love agency and need freedom in our lives. Do you think people with ADHD are more suited to open relationships?
It's tricky to say. Open relationships are much more complicated than just somebody who seeks freedom. You have to be a particular type of person to cope with an open relationship. For a start, you have to be very low in jealousy.
Yeah.
Okay, which is a major issue.
Like, wow.
And, there is no correlation between ADHD and how jealous you are. No. That's just an individual personality trait.
I'm thinking of RSD, though, as well, and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, it's not necessarily that ADHD is going to make you more amenable to being in an open relationship. That's a very complex thing to do with personality, your values, your upbringing. Lots of things come into whether or not you want an open relationship. Your belief system, your ideas about commitment and monogamy and all those sorts of things. So I would say ADHD is actually a very small factor in whether or not you should be in an open relationship. It's kind of much more complex. And there's no data to show that people who have ADHD are any more likely to be in an open relationship. People who have ADHD are more likely to be queer.
Yeah, someone said that to me actually recently.
And people with autism are. Neurodivergent people are more likely to be queer. And we don't know why that is. We don't know whether it's because particularly autistic people are less bound by social rules, simply because they don't adhere to social rules, they don't understand them, that actually they are much more open about what their sexuality actually is. They don't feel the need to conform in the same way. That might be one of the reasons, but we still don't quite know. But yes, you're more likely to be queer, but you're no more likely to be in an open relationship.
And as human beings, because I heard you talk about this, that we've evolved into monogamy and it was sort of created by a system. Yeah. Do you think as human beings we are wired for monogamy, or are we being pushed into it?
It depends which wiring you're talking about. So human behaviour is impacted by two very separate dimensions. One is biological and one is cultural. From a biological dimension, no, we're not wired to be monogamous. In fact, there are very few species in the world that are. Even if they look like they're monogamous, as in they live together as a couple, that's known as social monogamy, how they appear. But actually, they're not biologically monogamous or sexually monogamous, because actually they're off having matings behind a rock somewhere.
Who are they?
So penguins, for example. Penguins are famously monogamous. No, they're not.
Wow.
Okay, so they live together. I'm sorry. They live together in a couple. But they're all sneaking off behind rocks, mating with each other, because from an evolutionary point of view, that's the best thing you can do. Particularly, actually, if you're a female, because what you're doing is you've got your lovely buddy here who's going to be an amazing dad sitting on those eggs, raising those little baby penguins. But actually, maybe genetically, he's not so hot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here, get the genes from him. He's going to have to do no input, and I'm going to get him to do the input. So actually, from an evolutionary point of view, monogamy for anyone is a really bad idea. And if you're a male, you have the ability, obviously, to spread your seed multiply. You're not going to get pregnant. You're not going to be out of the mating game for 9 months or whatever. So you can do that. So again, why would you restrict yourself?
Yeah.
So actually, if you look at the genetic data we get out of so-called monogamous species, quite often their offspring are not the offspring of both members of that couple.
So they're at it as well.
So there's a difference between, so biologically, no, we're not. But socially, in many cultures, we are. Because we are a social animal, and there are lots of social rules and legal rules and religious rules about being monogamous in many societies, and not being monogamous is frowned upon. or it's illegal. For example, bigamy. You cannot be a bigamist. You cannot marry more than one person in many cultures. And, the grounds for divorce are infidelity.
Yeah.
So it's seen, it's very much frowned on. And so even though our biological drive might be, I want to go and, have an open relationship and not be monogamous, culturally, we tend to adhere to the rules because we're a group living animal and you don't want to be expelled from the group. Now, as divorce and that kind of thing gets less of a stigma, it opens up a bit. But we are still very much, as a society, a monogamous society. And, we know that from the fact that people who are in open relationships still get a lot of negativity about being immoral, for example. Mm-hmm. So it's really complicated. But yeah, biologically, no. Socially, yes. And, I get a lot of criticism for this because people go, well, I'm monogamous and I love it. Absolutely. We're not saying you won't love it. We won't say that you don't want to do it. But we also know humans have a very high infidelity rate. And just that means that they're not monogamous.
I wonder how much of it, and this is again just thinking out loud, how much of it is because it's forbidden as well. And I'm thinking of do we get more dopamine from things that we're not allowed to do?
Some people do. Some people are thrill seekers. Some people are dopamine seekers. Some people are sort of adrenaline seekers. And that's certainly what you get, dopamine from novelty. You get and some people are genetically predisposed to like novelty. So it might be that some people, being unfaithful, again, is a very complicated mix of lots of different biological and psychological factors, including, did you see infidelity as a child? Was it normalized for you? That kind of thing. But yes, certainly there are some people who seek novelty more than others. And as you know, there are some people who seek dopamine more than others. So it might be that they are more likely to be unfaithful because it's something they seek out. But it's very much whether or not you're unfaithful is a really complicated mix of factors.
Yeah, because it makes me think if people are in open relationships, if it's not forbidden, are you more intentional about it and it's less impulsive? It
depends. It really, really depends what kind of open relationship you have, because some people just have sexually based open relationships. So it's literally about sex and it's about, having sex with lots of different people. And, that tends to be what open relationships are or swinging is. When we get to polyamory is much more intentional because it's not only multiple sexual partners, but those partners also have an emotional investment. You are in love with those partners. And therefore you have multiple romantic relationships. And that is a much greater commitment and it's much more about investing in each of those relationships. And I've talked to a lot of polyamorous, in my book. Yeah. There's a whole chapter on polyamory because it's a really interesting factor of human behavior that we have people who genuinely have multiple romantic relationships at once. And it's not about a zero-sum game of, let's say you're in 3 relationships and everybody gets a third of your love. No, everyone gets 100% of your love because as polyamorous people say, your heart just grows. It doesn't mean that you reduce the love for each person. Yeah. And it's something that, we have to be open to accepting. I think that some people are polyamorous and that's fine.
And is there any research to prove that these people are happier in their relationships?
It's not necessarily that they're happier, but they're no less happy than people who are in monogamous relationships. Wow. So the relationship satisfaction, the sort of mental health outcomes, the longevity outcomes are just as strong as they are for monogamous relationships. So it's definitely not a case that these relationships are, more fragile, for example.
And do you know, or do you think, if individuals with ADHD are more likely to cheat or not?
I don't think there's any data on that as yet. Definitely they're more likely, as I said earlier, to separate, to divorce, to have more conflictual relationships. But again, whether or not they cheat, we're not quite sure yet. Yes. And again, because cheating is really complex, it's not just a biologically driven thing. It's very much a psychologically based behaviour as well. Yeah.
So for partners, again, they come to me quite a lot, partners of individuals with ADHD. How, in your opinion, how do we support someone we love with ADHD? What's the best thing people can do?
I think the thing you need to understand, I always say this in relationships, is first of all, we need to kind of stop the blame game, which is if there's any issues in a relationship with someone with ADHD, it's the person with ADHD's fault. Now, actually, that's not how relationships work. Relationships are the coming together of two people, and whether you're neurodiverse or not, those brains are different. And actually what the responsibility of both people in that relationship is to understand how the other person's brain ticks. And so one of the most important things is educate yourself about ADHD. Educate yourself about how that can impact relationships. Educate yourself about how that expresses itself in your partner. Because if we don't have that education, we can quite often, misread, for example, somebody forgetting to, do whatever you agreed to do to maintain the relationship last week. And you think, well, they're selfish or they're not interested. Actually, no, it's not that. It's the fact that because of ADHD, that has slipped out of their mind. They have not, registered that they need to do that. And so I think it's really important that you do that. But likewise, particularly in mixed relationships where we've got one person who's neurodivergent and one person who's not, the neurodivergent person also has to educate themselves about the neurotypical brain. How does that work? How does that person express love? What are the traits that they bring to the relationship? And that's really the most important thing, is let's not do sort of knee-jerk reactions to behaviour. Let's look at which you find rejecting or you find, difficult to deal with. Let's first of all look behind that. Is there a reason why, for example, that ADHD person is, striking out emotionally, or has completely forgotten to do something we agreed to do together, or whatever it might be? Is there a reason that is an ADHD reason why they're doing that, rather than simply interpreting that as something negative about their personality?
Yeah. This is why awareness is so important, right?
And it really is.
And I don't know if you saw the news today, but the NHS said they're closing the doors on ADHD diagnosis at the moment.
Crikey.
But this is what can be a game changer, because without anyone having the words to know why someone might be doing something, this can cause a lot of the breakdowns of relationships because they think it's character, not biology, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, the most important thing, it's a completely personal thing as to whether, if you suspect you are ADHD, whether you get a diagnosis or not. Absolutely personal. But I have very rarely met anyone who's had a diagnosis who has regretted it.
Yeah, so true.
Because it really informs you about who you are. But as you say, in your relationships, it helps other people understand who you are, understand why you might behave the way you do. And that can only be a good thing for a relationship, that greater knowledge. Yeah, for both of you. Like you said, I think it's an explanation, not an excuse, and it takes both of you, right? But how can you do that if you don't know what you're dealing with? Exactly. So no, I think, it's a really important thing, and that education for partners is one of the biggest things. But it also means, it doesn't mean that you have to mold yourself to the ADHD person. That's not how it works. Both partners should come together and equally invest in understanding each other and working to be compatible. Yeah. Really. And so it's for both people to do that. And that's where the hard work is, what you're talking about. Yeah. Is there any, again, research, or from what you've seen, is there any success rates on, two neurodivergent people coming together, or neurotypical neurodivergent? Are they better matched, or? We tend to find that neurodiverse, fully neurodiverse couples tend to, particularly if we're talking, autistic, ADHD, they tend to be more successful, partly because neurodiverse people tend to be drawn to each other. Yes. This is why I struggle with people. My family, they're like, well, everyone must have it. I'm like, no, you've just connected with a lot of people like you. It makes sense, though, because one of the things about being in a relationship is, and one of the things that makes being in a relationship easy, is if your brain does work the same way. So you can understand each other. It's like the massive myth that, autistic people haven't got empathy. It's not that autistic people haven't got empathy. It's that what the tests used to do was test them against a neurotypical person. Now, so you're asking that neurodiverse person to understand a neurotypical brain, which is what empathy is. I understand how your brain works. Well, that's really tricky. But if you ask a neurotypical to understand an autistic person's brain, they can't empathise with it because they're talking different brains. If you put two brains together that are the same, it's fine. I understand how to empathise with you because my brain works exactly the same as yours. Yeah. So we tend to find that neurodiverse people tend to gravitate towards other neurodiverse, both in their romantic relationships but also in their friendships. Because it's kind of like a I don't know, a sounding signal of like, we're all going to club together on this. Yeah, you're not alone. Yeah, it can be tricky if you have ADHD autistic. And why is that? Because autistic people require certainty. They require predictability. So the impulsive element of ADHD does not work well with someone who is autistic. So how does that stand for someone who's got that in their brain? Exactly. It's really, really hard. And that's why people who are ADHD struggle. Because basically you've got two completely different kind of brains in there pulling against each other. And that's why to be that particular profile is particularly difficult. Yeah, it's like when you get stability, you want some stimulation or novelty. Exactly. And then when you're in novelty, all you want is to be stable. Exactly. And that's the problem. You're constantly pulling in different directions. Exactly. You're sort of, part of your autistic's brain's going, no, I want certainty, I want predictability, I want it to be the same as yesterday. And your ADHD brain's going, no, I'm completely bored. Yeah. Something exciting has to happen. And that's what the problem is.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you mentioned the empathy thing, because that's what delayed me, and I know a lot of others, from getting an autistic diagnosis, because I was like, well, I'm an emotional wreck, so there's no way I'm autistic. But then I had all these, traits and symptoms that I was like, but they feel very autistic.
Yes.
But I didn't, I didn't know any of that for so long. None of us did we?
No.
Let's talk about narcissists. Just really interested, because a lot of my clients have said, oh, before I got my ADHD diagnosis, I used to Google a lot to see if I was a narcissist, but it actually makes a lot of sense when you think about the inattentiveness, what you said about in relationships, how that can be misunderstood. But what is a narcissist? Can you clear it up?
Okay,
because I
so
think
we use that word a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
And we overuse it massively. People with a narcissistic personality disorder, it's quite a small percentage of people. And if you truly meet one, you know. Narcissists are, it's more than self-centered. They are completely obsessed with their own self-aggrandizement. Everything in their lives is about pushing themselves up. And the way they do that mostly is by pushing other people down, belittling other people. And, in relationships, they are generally incredibly good at reeling people in. They are amazing social operators. So it's not that they don't have any emotional intelligence, but they use that emotional intelligence to completely, for their own ends, essentially. Narcissists are not interested in you at all. They will never apologise for anything they've done wrong. They will never accept responsibility for anything they've done wrong. And they will always try to one-up you. So if you are pleased at something you've done at work, they will turn it around to being, well, I did this and that was much better than you, for example. So it's a diagnosable psychiatric disorder.
How many of them you actually go and get diagnosed?
Not many, because you have to know there's a problem with you.
Yes, this is
they
the
tend
thing.
to be diagnosed because they've come for other reasons.
Wow.
So yeah, people with narcissistic personality disorder, it's not. So all the stuff on social media saying, you're the narcissist, no, it's a very complicated diagnosis.
Would a narcissist cry a lot or not?
Only if it meant that it made you do something.
Oh my God. So what is the difference then, if we could say in like pointers, in ADHD and versus narcissism?
Because people with ADHD do have emotional intelligence and they are empathetic, and they will not, if you are with someone with ADHD and you're celebrating something that you've achieved, they won't one-up it. That's not what they are a very different profile to someone with narcissism. Because they are an empathetic, loving group of people. It's because people say narcissism is just appearing self-centered or selfish. And some people with ADHD can appear like that because they are very impulsive. They tend to look like they're not considering the impact they have on other people around them.
Yeah.
So therefore, you are a narcissist. No, you're not. You might just be a little bit self-involved because ADHD makes you just want to do this now and I'm not going to think of the consequences for anyone else.
Yeah.
But that's not narcissism.
And do you think the fact that someone's Googling, when my clients come in, they say, oh, I was Googling if I was a narcissist, do you think that's a massive sign that you're not?
Yeah, because I think most narcissists are just like, I don't care.
Yeah, they won't even look.
And also, the reason why narcissists persist in our population is because they're very successful. So most narcissists are very pleased.
They're very happy.
Because the thing is, they're not the people suffering from them being a narcissist. The people they're with are suffering. They're not. They're getting all the gains. It's great.
So they must be really happy people.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. So I want to just quickly ask about ADHD in fathers. And I know there's not a lot around that, but... When I did find the stats that said 22.7% of parents of children with ADHD divorced compared to 12.6%, which I don't know how true that is. But how does it, because you've wrote an amazing book on the importance of fathers, and if, does that have any correlation between ADHD, do you know, or...
No, I mean, the reason why the stats on parents of ADHD children are so high is because I speak partly from the experience of having an ADHD child, is particularly if you're a neurotypical parent, learning to support, learning to understand your ADHD child can be difficult. And we know that particularly early on, particularly when they're younger, things like the emotional dysregulation, the impulsivity, that kind of thing, can be really difficult to handle. And it quite often... I know as a parent of a neurodiverse child, my husband and I generally are on the same page. But sometimes you're more likely to be on a different page. And we need to deal with that behaviour that way, or we need to deal with that. And it just leads to more conflict. It is a more stressful parenting journey sometimes, I think. And also just because, particularly if you want to get support for your ADHD kid, you spend your life fighting counsels or whoever it might be, and that's tiring and that takes a toll on any relationship. So I think it's more likely to be because it's something that does make parenting a little bit harder, particularly if you're neurotypical. I think that's more likely why those divorce statistics are there. Fathers, divorce or not, fathers are incredibly important to children. They are just, and we have a lot of myths about fathers. We build a lot of them, the idea that they aren't biologically and psychologically changed by becoming parents, so that mums are instinctive because they go through this amazing physiological process of pregnancy and childbirth, and obviously that's going to lead to hormonal changes and brain changes, but actually fathers go through exactly the same thing. So they are as primed, and that's one myth we need to get rid of. The other myth is that they don't build attachment relationships to their children, or it's not as important as mums. It's absolutely as important as mums. It's just crucially different, and that's because dads have a very particular role in child development, which is different to mum, and therefore we don't need mum and dad to be the same. We need them to be complementary.
What is their role?
So their role, twofold. First of all, they are the primary parent to build mental resilience in children. And we tend to see that coming out in the stats we have about how important they are to the mental health of their teenagers. So we know that the mental health of a teenager is more impacted by the attachment they have to their father than they do to their mother. And that's because if we go back to childhood and infancy, it's the way dads interact with their children. Dads tend to interact with their children in what we call a very stimulatory way. It's very physical. And they're always pushing developmental boundaries. They're challenging them physically. They're challenging them mentally. And because of that, they are the ones that underpin resilience. And it's resilience that is going to give you good mental health when you're older.
Wow.
So that's the one thing they do. The other thing they do is they underpin what we call, they scaffold the child's entry into the world beyond the family. That means they are the key parent when it comes to developing the social areas of the brain and the social skills that go along with that. So things like social language, what we call pro-social skills like sharing, caring, helping, things like emotional regulation, all that kind of thing is more down to the relationship a dad has with his child than a mum does.
Wow.
So dads are actually vital to their children, and it's not about saying that dads necessarily have to live with their children. I'm definitely not saying before the right wing get this and say everyone should be married. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying children need a dad in their lives. It doesn't even have to be the biological dad.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah. It can be anyone who steps up and does that job. So in other areas of the world, they have so many social fathers. It's something that we don't acknowledge, but like grandfathers, uncles, older brothers, football coaches, whoever it might be, who actually bring that facet of life to that child. And in other countries they would actually be called a father, but we don't call them a father because we're a bit obsessed with biology, but they are a father, and that's what we mean by children should have a father in their lives. It's just somebody who brings that male element to it, because yes, mums can do it, but they have to do it consciously. They have to consciously change their behaviour to bring in that stimulatory bit, whereas dads do it instinctively.
Wow. And do you think as well, because a lot of the women and friends that I know, they feel exhausted and they're trying to do it all, right? Especially the way the world is now. We've gone to the extreme. Yeah, we're like working, they're being mums, they're doing all of it. We're trying to do it all. Have we gone too far?
Absolutely too far. And I am a massive feminist.
Yeah, me too.
But I think feminism's to blame a little bit with the saying to women, you can do it all. We're really powerful and we're really empowered and we can do it all.
Yeah.
Why the hell should we?
I know.
I mean, why the hell should we? The whole point is children. Fatherhood evolved in the human line 500,000 years ago, long before we were even human. The last time a woman raised a human child on her own without any community help, without fathers, without relatives, was 1.8 million years ago.
Wow.
Long before we were human. So a human mother has not evolved to do it on her own. She's not supposed to. She's supposed to draw in this support from lots of different... And why should single mums do it all? So it's not a criticism of single mums. It's about saying, actually, do you know what? You shouldn't have to do it all.
No,
and it might be that the biological father of your child is absent, or for whatever reason you don't want them in your life.
Yeah.
Okay. But actually, what we want to encourage you to do is look around you.
Yeah, connect.
Who else is there who could be this role? Because for a start, it takes some of the load off you.
Yeah.
And we all want the best for our kids. And that means that whole developmental environment, which means having that male input as well is really important.
Yeah. I think, honestly, I can really feel that in all the women that I know, that is coming. That turnaround of like,
And we
I'm
know
just
that
too
if you
tired
get
to be doing all
equality
of
in the
this.
home, so
Yeah.
if you, and a lot of it's to do with government policies on fatherhood, like paternity leave is a joke.
Yeah. What is it at the moment?
2 weeks. But if
Oh
you're
my God,
self-employed,
still
it's
2
nothing.
weeks.
So, we are pushing for more than that, because once we can get men to be in the home, then women are freed,
Yeah.
essentially. And they're free to go to
You're on a
work
big
or do whatever
mission.
they want. Yeah.
Love this. Okay, quick fire round.
Yes.
One word, ADHD and love.
Passionate.
Love it. I've got a sex question.
Oh,
Is
God.
it true that women fall in love after, on average, 3 times of having sex with the same person?
No, it's rubbish.
Oh,
It's
okay.
an awful study.
The love drug, is that really a real thing being made?
Yes, people are researching love drugs. Absolutely. It's still very much in the academic world at the moment, and at the moment in the clinical treatment side of things. But, come on, let's face it. If they could get a commercial license, they would.
Green flags versus red flags. From a scientific point of view, are ADHDers more or less lovable?
They're absolutely as lovable. God, humans are so diverse. God.
Red flag. What's one thing an ADHDer needs to stop doing in a relationship immediately?
Squashing down all your own needs to meet the needs of the other person.
Yes, love that. Okay. And the sniff test. Should ADHDers ditch dating apps and start sniffing potential partners instead, according to your book?
It could help. It's definitely, you get more information than on a dating app. So, yeah, go around sniffing people.
Okay. And final message, last words to someone with ADHD who is struggling to believe they are good enough, or they're too much, or lovable at all.
Absolutely lovable at all. Regardless of whether you're neurodiverse or neurotypical, humans are so diverse and there are so many people out there for you. So do not pretend to be something you're not. Be yourself, and there are loads of people out there.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right.
I'm so glad we did this. Thank you.
That's all right.